Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I'm proud to bring you Brian's Drive-In Theater with Brian Walker. But first, a small taste of Sword and Sandal Superheroes, Strange Science and Outer Space. A millennium ago, Ares bound Hercules to some stones jutting out of the seas surrounding Hellas and cloaked the small isle with invisibility. Hercules finally broke free in time to help a blind boy named Kevin and his dog named Basil fight off a tentacle horror from the mythic realms. Hercules discovers that World War III has devastated the world and that horrible mutants now roam the earth. As Hercules accompanies his new friend to Rome in search of Kevin's father, they fight off some minotaurs and discover that Ares is behind much of the mayhem. Hercules challenges Ares, but must instead fight Ares' champion, a large red mutant reminiscent of the Hulk. Kevin and Basil help take down the creature, only to discover that it is Kevin's father that they have killed. And therein ends the first issue of DC's Hercules Unbound, and we'll be sharing other chapters as this voyage continues. But for now, without further ado, Brian Walker and Brian's Drive-In Theater.
Good evening, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? I'm looking forward to today's show, as always.
Well, and I am too. Tonight, what I thought we would talk about are the passings of a couple of actresses who were profiled on the website. One is Barbara Rush, who passed away on March 31st. Barbara Rush, I know she's on my website, and my website's usually connected with B movies, and she obviously was in some B movies, but she got really close to being a big time A-list movie star actress. And she was in some pretty good A pictures as well. So that's kind of the arc on her. So you might want to call her. And this is not to detract from her. I mean, she was a great actress. I loved her performances. Well, I've watched two of her movies in the last 2 days. One of them was Moon of the Wolf. A lot of people are familiar with that
Yes.
movie. It was a 1972 ABC film made for television. And it's a horror film with a fantastic cast. David Jansen, Royal Dano, Jeffrey Lewis, John Berardino, who's, if you were a soap opera fan in the 80s, you'll remember him from General Hospital.
Mhm.
And he also did countless hours of television in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it's good, just like it just has a great cast. Bradford Dillman actually is in it, in an interesting role, and I'll just leave it at that. It's a public domain film, as a lot of ABC movies of the week did lapse into public domain in the 90s.
The ones that
Um,
weren't erased.
well, yeah, there have been. You are correct. There have been some movies of the week from all three networks that were taped over, which is just hard to fathom, you know. But but there are a few out there, or they're not out there now, you know, as
There
it turns
were
out.
several of those out there.
That happened with a lot of soap operas too. But I hated to hear about Barbara Rush passing. She was 97 years old, which is amazing. Um, I can't imagine. And she didn't. I mean, she lived a very full life. Up until she got up until the end. She was very active and involved, and looked far younger than a person in their 90s that you'd ordinarily think. And like I said, she was in some great movies. She really was. She's early on. She married a young up and coming star who was Jeffrey Hunter, that a lot of people remember from The Searchers.
Hmm.
He was Jesus in King of Kings. He's the blonde, tan Jesus. That sort of that 60s archetypal Jesus, the very handsome one. Very, very handsome man too, and he's also profiled on the website. And initially, he was going to be, he was. I don't remember what his character's name was, but he was going to be captain of the Starship Enterprise on Star Trek,
I had heard that,
and he
yes.
was in the pilot, which you can see, and they incorporated footage from the pilot into the series. But without if it had been Jeffrey Hunter, Shatner, I guess, would have been out of a job. Jeffrey Hunter is kind of a sad footnote. He died at a very young age. He was only 43 years old. He had some sort of blunt force trauma in a prop explosion in Spain, I believe, making a film in 1968. And by some accounts, it changed his personality. He was engaged to marry Sally Ann Howes, who was truly scrumptious from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That's the easiest way for me to. In the late 60s and early 70s, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang seemed to be on television quite a bit during my childhood, anyway, and I never missed it. I loved the movie. And she's fantastic in it, too. But anyway, he was supposed to marry her. They were engaged. And after the prop explosion accident, they split up. I don't know what happened. And then he married Emily McLaughlin, who was Nurse Jessie Brewer from General Hospital. And she was a day one character on General Hospital and stayed with the show until she passed away in 1991. But she became the third Mrs. Jeffrey Hunter. And only about 3 months or so after they got married, he died. Her daughter, I've heard, seems to think that his death was mysterious. Um, he sort of stumbled on the stairs and then hit his head on something, and he died during surgery. Uh, but I, I don't know. I can't imagine he had any. I don't know why somebody would try to murder him, but I don't think he had any underworld ties but who knows? Maybe he did. But anyway, one other interesting thing about Jeffrey Hunter is that he lobbied Sherwood Schwartz hard for the Mike Brady role in the Brady Bunch. But Sherwood Schwartz thought that Jeffrey Hunter was too good looking to be the father of six children.
Oh,
Although
okay.
he had something like four or five. I mean, I don't think he had quite six, but he was getting up there. He had at least three before, something like that. He had multiple. And Joyce Bulifant, who used to be on Mary Tyler Moore, was supposed to be Carol Brady.
Well, I did not know these things.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Joyce Bulifant, she was on so many different, TV shows. In the 50s, 60s, 70s. She was on Perry Mason back in the early 60s.
Mhm.
She was married to James MacArthur from Hawaii Five-O for, I think that was her first husband, about 10 years or so. She was married to Roger Perry. She married William Asher for a while, who directed Bewitched. And he was once married to Elizabeth Montgomery. Hollywood's really incestuous.
Yes, always has been. I expect it always will be.
You
In
hear
fact,
all these.
I talked to somebody today who was one of the directors on my TV show of many years ago, and he's out in Los Angeles now working in the, television, movies, and writing. He's also a professional magician, and he was talking about how incestuous Hollywood is, and he was saying
Always
that
was.
the present has made it even worse than what it was before.
you know, uh, I've seen that. I've seen nepotism even in state government. So, and I don't doubt that it's worse than ever in Hollywood, but it always was bad.
Yes.
I mean, you always hear about the casting couch and having to sleep with a director or a producer to get a better role or something like that. But the other side of it is you don't need a casting couch if this is your cousin, or your son, daughter, whatever. Yeah, nepotism, it's a long-standing Hollywood tradition. Good work if you can get it too.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
we would all be so much better off if we'd been better born.
You're absolutely right. I cannot dispute your logic, sir.
Yeah, if only my parents had been Hiltons or DuPonts or something like that, life
Ne-
would just easy street. That would be so nice. You could just sit around and pout and
next life, we got to plan better.
yeah, tell me. Anyway, Barbara Rush. I mean, just a wonderful actress. I've never seen one bad word of press about her either. She just seems to have been loved by everybody. She was married one more time, but she wasn't married to a matinee idol like Jeffrey Hunter. But neither one of her marriages really lasted too long. She had a child with each marriage, and when her second marriage tanked in the early 70s, well, she had to work. And beautiful until the day she died too. Just gorgeous, but also a very talented actress too. Did a lot of television, especially later in her career. But some of her earlier films are really fascinating. She did a couple of science fiction films that, for a lot of people, that's what she would be best remembered for, especially in horror and sci-fi circles. When Worlds Collide is one of them. That's a movie from 1951. Actually had a digest version of When Worlds Collide on Super 8 millimeter film, which I still have somewhere in a closet upstairs, I believe. But it's an interesting horror film with a really good cast too. John Hoyt's in it, who did a lot of science fiction in the 50s and 60s. Rachel Ames, Frank Cady, Hayden Rourke from I Dream of Jeannie is in it. Her best one, however, the one that so many people would remember, is It Came from Outer Space. And she is, the co-star with Richard Carlson in It Came from Outer Space. But Russell Johnson, who was the professor from Gilligan's Island, has a good-sized role in It Came from Outer Space. So does Charles Drake, who was a character actor for decades, really recognizable in everything from television movies such as The Lives of Jenny Dolan to he's in Valley of the Dolls. He's in Audie Murphy movies. He's in Tobor the Great. That is, he did a lot of oddball stuff, but he worked his whole career until he decided to retire, and then like me, he just cut ties and walked away. That's the way to end a career. Interestingly, there's another great actress in this film, and that's Kathleen Hughes, who is still with us. I believe she'll be 96 this year.
Wow.
So she and Barbara Rush alone, wow. I mean, to live that late into your 90s, I think that is just remarkable, amazing. And you're starting to see a lot of it more and more on social media, and I think that's fantastic. For a while, I believe Mamie Van Doren's ex-husband, Ray Anthony, was the oldest person on social media at 100. But I don't think he's posted any in the last year or two. He's still, he's still alive, and very much so, apparently. He and Mamie Van Doren had a son, Perry, and I think Perry's got to be like 67, 68 years old, and both of his parents are still alive. Can you imagine what kind of
Wow.
luck is that? I mean, to be old, you're getting to be a senior citizen yourself, and your parents are still alive and conscious, and you can still talk to them. That is amazing. Those are good genes. He should live to be 120 minimum, I would think, or I hope he does anyway.
I hope it does.
As long as he's happy and healthy.
Yeah, my mother is still alive. I'm in my 60s. I'll be 65 in a couple of months. And Athena, who's also 65, her father is still alive
Mhm.
and is currently staying with us.
Yes, I saw that on Facebook. Um, yeah, my parents are both still with us. Now they were young when I was born, so they're not that much older than I
So we're all blessed, and maybe we all live to be 100 or more.
Well, yeah, especially if you want to. Let me put it that way. Greg's mother was 94 when she passed away, and that last year or so was really hard,
Mhm.
on her. And well, I don't want to go into all that, but it's depressing.
Okay.
But and so was the passing of Barbara Rush. I really hated to see. I was hoping she'd make it to 100, or more. Because, like I said, she was in some great movies.
Mhm.
She's in The Young Lions, which with Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift, the big, Dean Martin, Hope Lang, great cast there. The Young Philadelphians is another good movie. That's one of Paul Newman's kind of big breakthrough films. It seems to be when he firmly implanted himself as an A actor. But she's also in Strangers When We Meet, which is a great movie with Kim Novak, one of my favorites. Kirk Douglas is in it. Ernie Kovacs, the comedian, although this is not a funny role. Come Blow Your Horn, Robin and the Seven Hoods. She was in some great movies, and as you age, you have to take the roles that you can find. Um, and I think she had some really fun roles in the 70s. Tapping back into her horror and science fiction cred, she's in Moon of the Wolf, which we talked about. And
Mhm.
today's movie of the day, and I ran this because I wanted to talk about Barbara Rush, is The Eyes of Charles Sand, which is not exactly a horror film, but it is sort of a mystery thriller, getting close to horror,
So no crawling eyeballs or.
No, darn it. But, but nonetheless, it's a really good film. And it again made for TV. Joan Bennett's in it, great film noir actress, and Elizabeth Collins Stoddard on Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows, yes.
Yeah. And Peter Haskell, Bradford Dillman, again, he was in Moon of the Wolf with Barbara Rush, and he's also in The Eyes of Charles Sand. Adam West, Gary Clark, who was an actor you used to see in a lot of stuff, and Don Barry. He was a Western actor who, interestingly, he was a shorter guy, maybe not the most handsome, but apparently was kind of a ladies' man. Got around quite a bit. Very popular with the ladies as well. Dated Joan Crawford for a while. Joan. When you think of Joan Crawford, you think of men that she would see. You think of Clark Gable and people like that. You don't think of this stocky Western star. And this is sad, I think, but she really liked him and enjoyed his company, but made a deal with the paparazzi to not be photographed with him because he didn't really fit the image of somebody that Joan Crawford would date.
So somebody can look too good to have children, and somebody else could not look like somebody that a person would date.
Well, I mean, I know that sounds shallow, but she image was everything, to a movie star, like an actress, like Joan Crawford. And I would expect that she'd want to be in control of how she is portrayed in the media, and I guess I understand. I mean, I know it sounds hateful, but I also get it too. And it also gave her a little bit of a private life.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, you go out in public with whomever and get all the publicity, but in your private life, I think that should be more closely guarded. I don't think that should be, plastered all over tabloids and such. So I mean, we could look at it like that. Like that. It doesn't make Joan Crawford sound
That
nearly as horrible.
is a good way of looking at it. So we'll look at it
It
that way
is,
now.
and you know what? I think that was smart. I don't blame her one bit. But she agreed that she liked seeing him and they had a good time. Just don't don't take my picture with him. Another actress passed away, and she's more obscure than Barbara Rush. I mean, a lot of people remember Barbara Rush from television, films, all kinds of movies, science fiction, horror. She's in Can't Stop the Music. She's Bruce Jenner's mother in it, in kind of a showy, flashy role. Looks fantastic, by the way.
Mhm.
Valerie Perrine makes a comment in the film about how good she looks because she does. It looks fabulous. And a really welcome sight in that movie. It's a fun movie to watch. Can't Stop the Music, but it really is terrible, but fun. It has some good cameos. But the other person that I wanted to talk about that is an actress who passed away um, on October 27th of 2023. But her death wasn't announced until just about a month ago or so. And her name's Anne Heywood. And like I said, not as well known as Barbara Rush. Have you ever heard of Anne Heywood?
I'm sure I have, but my brain does not retain names as yours does.
Okay. Did you ever see a movie called The Fox? It's Anne Heywood, Sandy Dennis, and Keir Dullea.
What was it about?
Sandy Dennis and Anne Heywood are lesbian lovers living in this in Canadian tundra essentially, and they're trying to farm, and it's not going very well. And then a mysterious stranger, they meet, and that is Keir Dullea, and he comes between them. And well, if I tell any more, it's going to give away the story. Um,
And no, that doesn't sound familiar.
it was really groundbreaking for the time, and for several reasons. For one thing, it was the two main characters are lesbians. You just did not see that in mainstream films in the 60s. And this film was made by Anne Heywood and her husband, Raymond Strauss. She'd been toiling in films for years. And to back up, just to give a little bit of biographical information on her, Anne Heywood was born in Birmingham, England, grew up kind of tough circumstances. Great Britain during the war and into the late 1940s was kind of a tough place to live. If you listen to a lot of the old Eric Burden and the Animals songs from the 60s, you can hear how bleak their existence was or had been. And Anne Heywood had a pretty rough existence. She was one of seven kids. The mother in the family died, I think, during World War II. I think she passed away. And I think she only went to school until about eighth or ninth grade because she had other things to do and had to earn money for the family and such. But very beautiful, even as a teenager, and won the Miss Great Britain title in 1950. And from there, she appeared on television in Britain. A lot of people forget that, or everybody in America thinks that America was first at everything. Not when it comes to television programming. Britain was the first there. Britain started regular programming in 1936 through the BBC. Now, admittedly, there were probably like 8 televisions in the whole country, but they did have a
But still,
television,
they had shows.
and they had programming on. And
I have a story to share when you finish.
Okay. Anyway, she was on some 40s programming in Great Britain, and eventually she toured the country in this stage show. It was very popular with teenagers, people her age, essentially. And initially, and inevitably, she was signed by the Rank organization, and she didn't like her birth name, which was Violet Pretty, which I can see. So she took her mother's maiden name and then tacked Anne on front of it, and that's how she became Anne Heywood. Now, what were you going to say?
When I was growing up and going to Greece, the island where my family is from, we used to go there and stay there mostly and then travel around a little bit. But one of my uncles, I was telling him about television,
Mm.
and he smacked me on the head because he felt I was lying. And when my parents asked him, he said that, "Oh, he's telling these tall tales, So I wanted to stop him from saying such foolishness. And years later, when I went back there, and I saw this uncle again, he was telling me about he had a television, and they had two channels, two whole channels, and he
Well,
was explaining this to me with solemnity. I didn't slap him on top of the head, although maybe I should have, but I listened very patiently. I listened very patiently, but I could identify with what you were saying.
Well, and like I said, Great Britain was initially at the forefront of television. There is a great early television museum just outside of Columbus. You can, it's pretty easy to find if you look it up. The exact name of it escapes me at the moment, but in their collection, they have a lot of British television cameras and monitors from the 1930s, and they are more sophisticated than the stuff that was being used in America at the time. Now, obviously, everybody else caught up, but Britain was really at the forefront of all that, groundbreakingly so. And that's sort of how Anne Heywood, by hook or by crook, became, a film actress. And the Rank organization put her in a lot of kind of tepid British thrillers, some of which are actually pretty good. And one that I watched, which I kind of enjoyed, is called The Depraved. It's a British noir from 1957. You can find it on YouTube, and I kind of found it interesting. It's interesting to see some of her early work. I'm more familiar with her movies in the 60s.
Hmm.
Um, and she had sort of a nice girl next door reputation in films, and um, uh, well, and that's probably best demonstrated in a movie of hers that I've run on on as the movie of the day, called Upstairs and Downstairs. And if you go to the Anne Heywood page at the drive-in, that is the film now showing. It's Upstairs and Downstairs. It's color, which is nice for a British comedy. And she is sort of Michael Craig's in it,
Hmm.
Claudia Cardinale, and Milena DiMaggio is also in it, and she's sort of the sex kitten. And then you have, on the other side, you have Anne Heywood, who is sort of the girl next door, kind of thing. Well, that wasn't really her career wasn't going anywhere, quite honestly, and she was just kind of decorative in a lot of these movies. There were some exceptions. I think she's really good in Violent Playground with David McCallum, Peter Cushing, and Stanley Baker. Um, eh, there are a few that stand out, but mostly she didn't have a whole lot to do in these films. She was just sort of in them, and very pretty, very attractive actress. Well, when she was making a movie called The Night Fighters, which is really interesting, I watched some of it yesterday on YouTube. Um, it stars Robert Mitchum, but the movie takes place in Ireland. So guess what? Robert Mitchum has an Irish accent through the whole thing, but it sounds okay. Everybody else is a British actor trying to sound Irish, so it doesn't really sound that off, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Because at first I was when he first came on screen, I'm expecting to hear Robert Mitchum with a cigarette dangling out of his hand and a highball, on the other, or a cigarette dangling out of his mouth and a highball in his hand, and he's not, and he's this Irish brogue. It's kind of odd, but the movie is pretty good, quite honestly. Anyway, when they were making the film, Anne Heywood met the producer, Raymond Strauss, and they got married. He was some older than she was, probably by about, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. And he could see that she wasn't really being used effectively.
Hmm.
She had more talent than she was allowed to display. And she was a very attractive actress, but they would put her in dowdy clothes because she was supposed to be the girl next door. So they didn't exploit the fact that she was attractive, right? So why I see the dichotomy. I see the problem with where her career was going. So he decided to completely, remake her image, and he did. Often later on in the 60s, they began financing their own films. But she's in kind of an interesting film called The Very Edge with Richard Todd and Nicole Mari.
Hmm.
Jeremy Brett is in it as well. It's kind of progressive, for that era, 1963. We talked about the Fox from 1967. The lesbian couple in Canada who were threatened by a fox in the form of Keir Dullea. And that film was a success. She and Heywood, let's call her Anne Helm, and Heywood and her husband Raymond Strauss financed the film themselves. Shot it in Canada. Apparently, he was really difficult to deal with. It was a real steamroller, which you have to be, if you're producing films, but not the most pleasant person to deal with in terms of business dealings. But he did manage to change her reputation. They gave her a much more sexual, sort of a sexual makeover. She went from girl next door to Mata Hari, essentially. And some of her films were for the day really shocking. The Fox, a movie about two lesbians that came out in 1967. That's pretty progressive,
Yes.
and ironically, it made them a ton of money because it was so cutting edge at the time. She made a couple of films that the Italians loved, and they were both made in Italy. One's called The Lady of Monza. Hardy Kruger and Antonio Sabato are in it. You probably know who Antonio Sabato Jr. is. Well, his father, this is his father in the film. And in The Lady of Monza, Anne Helm is Mother Superior in this convent, and she's having this torrid fling, essentially. It depends on how you look at it, but she's having intercourse with Antonio Sabato and gets pregnant. And that's sort of the crux of the movie. Mother Superior is pregnant. So, kind of an interesting film. Wildly popular in Italy. I would think that it might upset some Catholics, but apparently
I would
not.
think so too.
But maybe they found it titillating. I don't know. And a movie that I watched last night, as a matter of fact, called The Nun and the Devil, which is actually better than The Lady of Monza. In The Nun and the Devil, Anne Helm wants to be Mother Superior. She's not Mother Superior as she is in The Lady of Monza, but wants to be, and is going to do anything she needs to do to become Mother Superior, anything. She's a lesbian and has a young lesbian lover that she wants to bring up through the convent.
Mhm.
But in the meanwhile, she's not sleeping with a man to get her way is fine. So, and that's kind of in the late 60s, early 70s. That's pretty rough stuff. And they got fairly you can see some nudity,
Uh-huh.
in these films. And there again, Anne Heywood, beautiful, great shape, looks fantastic. In her early 40s when she did The Nun and the Devil, but looks fantastic. Good actress too. Another really interesting film of hers, and it's not often seen, but it's often talked about, incidentally, especially now. And that's called I Want What I Want.
Hmm.
In the movie, she plays two roles. She plays a male and a female. And what she does is she portrays a male who transitions to female. So it's an early movie about transsexualism, transgender. And this is from 1972. Um, they do, she and her husband do a pretty good job with it too. They make her, it's kind of hard to make this beautiful woman look like a man, but they actually do a pretty good job with it. And it's a really interesting film. And there again, the sexual themes that run through a lot of her later films are just shocking, for the time. They really are. Another one that she made later into her career is called Good Luck, Miss Wyckoff. And that one got some play on HBO, as I recall, when I was a teenager, and it's pretty rough. The movie has a great cast, by the way. Donald Pleasance is in it, Earl Holliman, Carol Jones, Dorothy Malone, Ronnie Blakely is in this movie. She plays this old maid school teacher who has never had sex and is raped by the custodian at the school where she teaches after hours. And it's the only physical contact she's ever had with anybody. So she lets it keep happening for the movie and then gets blamed. You could see how that would roll out in the late
Uh-huh.
70s. But there again, just kind of a wild, sexually charged film, and another one at that. I mean, she made a lot of them. In a sense, if you've watched any of Carol, and I got a friend who likes Carol Baker as much as I do. If you watch her later films, the ones that she made in the 60s or 70s, Carol Baker's movies were very sexually charged, and so are Anne Heywood's in a different way, but still very similar in that respect. She made a movie that bombed at the box office. It shouldn't have, though, because it's really not that bad. It's called Midas Run. Uh, she and her husband produced it. It came out in 1969. Richard Crenna is her male co-star in it. Fred Astaire is in it, but denounced the film later on because
Wow.
he claimed that Anne Heywood and Raymond's and her husband inserted these nude scenes that weren't in his copy of the script. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he claimed. And he sort of washed his hands of it. But the film was already in the can, so I don't washing your and it bombed anyway. So what didn't make any difference anyway. And Richard Crenna said that even though Anne Heywood was in great shape, beautiful, she was very picky about how she was going to have to do a topless scene. It was didn't she wanted to look a certain way. So they're in bed together, but they put the bed on an incline so that her chest would come come up closer to her neck. So
Okay.
so she so she didn't look as pendulous,
Yeah.
as you might. So I kind of get that, and you know what? That's really smart too. If you ask me, I, I think that's amazing. I don't know that I would have probably been so about exposing myself, but to have some artistic control over it, I think that's really bright. But Richard Crenna thought it was kind of odd. I don't know why, because it makes perfect sense to me. Um, so that's kind of the thing that I really remember Anne Heywood for. Very good actress, capable of handling a comedy, drama. Um, she's in some great Italian films. The Italians clearly loved her too. And anything that whatever you say about her films, especially the ones after she changed her image,
Hmm.
those things are fun to watch. They really are. Some of her early movies are fun, but a lot of times she's just there for decoration, sadly, and shouldn't be, because I think she had a lot more to offer. When her husband passed away in 1988, and like I said, he was some years older than she was. She decided to pack it in, and she remarried, lived a great life in Beverly Hills, and she passed away in Texas back in October from natural causes. And her son, from her marriage to Raymond Strauss, survived her, and he's a bit older than I am. I'd say he's probably early 60s. Um, but lived a long life, made some great films. And I got to tell you, when I was in graduate school, everybody was really interested in her film, The Fox, because of because it centered on a lesbian couple. It was a lot to write about in terms of film
Mhm.
theory and such because of that alone. If we had seen some of her other films, we would have forgotten all about the fox, uh, and exploring, the transsexualism, the transgender issues, and I Want What I Want. And admit it, it's 52 years ago, so it's going to seem dated now.
Mhm.
Back then, oh my, nobody, you either didn't know what it was or you didn't dare talk about it in polite company, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's
Christine
really groundbreaking.
Jorgensen, the Christine Jorgensen story and what was
That's
going.
essentially what that movie is. Yeah.
Yeah, that changed. That made a lot of people aware of the whole issue, and I seem to remember that. It's like, where were you when JFK was shot? You know, it's like another thing is, where were you when the Christine Jorgensen story hit? Because everyone I've talked to knows about it and still remembers it. And
I remember it from when I was a child. Yeah.
yes, yes, same here.
And I love the fact that, she's in some, I love Italian films, especially thrillers. And The Nun and the Devil, you can see that on YouTube. I highly recommend it. It is wild. It's just amazing. It's not only wild for 1973, it's wild for now. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
What is it rated? Like, would it be rated mature,
Ooh,
PG,
it would be an R.
an R? Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is it cut on YouTube or?
I don't know because I don't have it on DVD. So I don't know if it is, I don't know how censored it is on YouTube.
Well, I haven't seen it. If I've seen it, I don't remember it, so I will check it out definitely.
It's fun.
And you
Now,
did a great job in your tribute to the careers of these two women and the people associated with them. I'm very impressed, and I was genuinely moved by some of the things that you shared about them.
well, yeah, these are two of my favorites. One that everybody knows, and one better known in Europe. The other is better known in Europe really than here, and that's Anne Heywood. Um, the last thing I wanted to leave you with was, I know for forever you and I have been talking about Tubi, and I finally got it together to register for Tubi and watched my first movie.
Oh,
And
really? I never
it's
registered for Tubi. Yeah, because you don't have to register. So I just,
well, but if you want to get in, and you don't have to, but if you want to get in and save your place in a film or something like
okay,
that,
I
you have
understand.
to you have to log in. And the reason that I signed up was because I saw on, I can't, it must have been Facebook, but I saw on social media that some drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race had made a comedy horror film called Slay. And it came out just, just about, I think, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it's a Tubi original movie.
Oh wow, they're making their
Yeah.
own movies now. That is awesome.
So I watched it and I loved it. It's really funny. They handle the comedy really well. And the horror is pretty good too. It looks good. Um, and I'm very familiar with the drag queens who are in it because I watch RuPaul's Drag Race, constantly. Trinity the Tuck, otherwise known as Trinity the Tailor, is sort of the leader of the gang. Heidi in Closet is also in the film. Crystal Method and Caramel. They're the four drag queens. Now, Caramel wasn't from RuPaul's Drag Race, but the other three are. And you see them in and out of drag in the film. And it has elements of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, but it also has some elements of Zombieland in it too. Although it's not zombies in this film, it's vampires.
Okay.
And the um, the MacGuffin in the film, or um, how the action takes place, or the setting for the action, I should say, is that they are on tour. They're in an old motorhome, the four drag queens, and Heidi got them a booking like somewhere in Texas, and it's this redneck bar. and they need the money, so they do the job anyway. They were actually hired to do it. But something happens, and all of these hillbillies start turning into vampires and start creating other vampires, and it's just it's fun to watch. It really was fun. I highly recommend it. And if you like somewhat current music, I'm not going to recite the lyrics of the song, but Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion had a song a few years ago called, I'll just use the initials WAP because that's how it was released.
Okay.
And the drag queens do a routine to the song. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It is so funny. The
Not
the
too
song the
just
song is filthy too, so be prepared. But it was a riot. I loved the movie from start to finish. In fact, we were talking about watching it again here pretty soon.
yeah, I like movies that are so bad they're good or so different that
Well,
they're
this actually isn't bad. It gets pretty good reviews on IMDb. I don't take that with a grain of salt, but I think it was like 6.8, 6.9. So that's a decent
pretty good.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably not for everybody, but I loved it. So there.
All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. And how is your website progressing? I know you're always polishing it up and making adjustments and
Well, it is. I'm being invaded by a feline, but website's going really well. What I'm trying to do right now is I've been going through it again and again, trying to find mistakes because I found one just yesterday, as a matter of fact, a big one. I found that Anne Heywood hadn't been connected to the main cheesecake page, which was like, I can't believe I did that. Can't believe I overlooked it. So I connected her up this morning, as a matter of fact.
good.
From there, after I get everything so standardized and taken care of, that's when I want to start playing with some of the design elements. You'll see some minor changes on the actor pages, but hopefully a bigger change on the index pages.
We've also done like hundreds of podcasts.
Yes, we have.
So you could link eventually
I need to.
the podcasts, and this way, if people want to learn more, they could tune in and get your wisdom directly, and they could associate a face with the website.
And that's something that I had planned to do. Excuse me. And I'm still going to get my own podcast off the ground. I just
I'm
have
looking, I'm so looking forward to that, and please,
me too.
whenever it airs, we will link to it, we'll promote it, and what do you call it? That is an awesome evolution.
I will get it pulled together here. Well, you see the feline in question. I'll get it pulled together here this summer, and I'm really looking forward to getting it going. None of us are getting any younger, and
No.
I've got there's some people I want to talk to, and I want to make sure that I talk to them before. I hate to sound maudlin, but before it's too late.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm asking myself, like, what do I want to do? And again, I'm limited in some ways because of my spinal arthritis and other things. But it's like, I'm not going to be here forever. And, it's true of everybody that nobody knows when they're going to go. But in the time I have left, I want to do some things. So I'm starting to do them. And going on the lion diet, that sounds,
Sorry,
it's okay. And
you didn't need to see her butt, but
to do strongman stunts, and so I'm just going to do them one by one. And if I don't succeed, that's okay. At least I tried to get it off my chest and to cross off my bucket list.
that's sort of my plan for the remainder of the year is to get the site just in the shape that I want to see it in, for one thing, and then I'll start tweaking some of the design and organizational elements to make it more user friendly. It's always my end goal. I think it's pretty user friendly right now, but like you said, there's some missing elements to it. I think getting away from like the Amazon um, um, links to products has actually been a good thing as opposed to a bad
Good.
thing. I've even been thinking about dumping the Google Ads. Quite honestly, I find them annoying, and they break up the page. I don't really care for it. If it were bringing in more money, I might be
Tempted to leave.
uh, a little more amenable to it, but it doesn't really bring in much money. It pays for the server, and that's about it.
I stopped the affiliates a long time ago when I first started with my websites and my shows, which were initially interview with typed questions on the website. Some of that stuff's still floating around. The ads, the not ads, the affiliate programs paid for everything, and they paid fairly decently. At
They
least
did.
it wasn't costing me anything, and then that stopped. So when it stopped, I took all the ads off, and that was it.
Hmm. Yeah, don't give them anything for free. Exactly. I agree.
I want to thank you for tonight's episode. It was very informative and lots of fun as always. Anything new and exciting coming up in the near future that we can look forward to?
Well, personally, I will be on the road for about a month. However, I am not planning on taking any vacation from our podcast, so I will be available for those when they come up in well later this month and then next month as well. Kind of looking forward to getting out and exploring around a little bit more. And like I said earlier, we're going to visit three different groups of friends. We're going to visit some of Greg's family on this trip. We're also going to get some much needed beach time as well, and that's always welcome. Not that I was going to say we're not beach people, but that's really not true. I guess we are. I love to be at the beach, and um, the two properties that we're going to two different beaches. We're going to Tybee and we're going to St. Augustine Beach.
Hmm.
Both of our vacation rentals are or oceanfront, and that'll make it nice. And we can just you walk on the beach, maybe have some seafood, just spend a nice, relaxing week without any responsibilities. I guess it's kind of what I'm looking forward to anyway.
It sounds wonderful, and I hope
It
that you
does sound.
enjoy yourselves immensely. And I'm looking forward to hearing all about it uh, as it occurs or afterwards.
Oh, both. Yeah, yeah, because we'll be in the middle of it, for some of it. We're also going to Walt Disney World for
Oh,
a week.
awesome,
We're
awesome.
gonna meet. We're gonna meet some friends there, for a week, and I'm psyched about that too.
That's something I never got around to doing, going to one of the Disneyland or Disney World. It's on my bucket list though, so I still have some time.
If I were going to pick one, I would pick Disneyland over Disney World.
Okay.
For one big reason. Since Disneyland is the older park and they had less room for sprawl, it's easier to walk
Okay.
because you get off one attraction and then there's the entrance to the next attraction. So you don't have to. Disney World will walk you to death. Um, if you want to go to an amusement park where you will get like 30,000 steps in a day, go to Epcot.
That's someone to it. Okay.
but if you're having joint problems and such, Disneyland in Anaheim is the better bet. And it also has, I mean, you and I grew up in roughly the same era. You remember a lot of the '60s Disney
Yes.
stuff, and Disneyland still has a lot of that, which is
Oh,
kind of
wow.
cool. The Matterhorn and some of the other attractions are so cool. I haven't been since like 2012, so it's been a long time since I've been to Disneyland. May go back next year though.
Well, I'll get to experience it vicariously and until I can find myself either in California or Florida.
You
Thank
can on YouTube you can experience some of the rides, some of the old vintage ones. The
you.
people
Okay.
people had their old VHS recorders in there, and it's so cool to do that. I recommend it.
Now I have two movies and something else to watch for.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
And thanks to our wonderful audience. Until next time, joyous journeys and amazing adventures. And we will be back with another episode of Brian's Drive-In Theater very soon. Is it this week or next week?
I believe it's next week.
I believe so too. So,
I have to look at my phone to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that it's the 18th.
okay.
So yes, it's next week.
And did we do the how can people contact you yet?
Oh, I don't think we did.
Oh, I
If you
think
want to interact with me on social media, visit me at my Facebook profile page, Brian J. Walker or Brian's Drive-In Theater. And if you want to stop by the website and check out perhaps one of Anne Heywood's films or maybe one of Barbara Rush's movies, go to briansdrivein-theater.com and see what we have. There are all kinds of static photos, but there's also all kinds of film that you can watch as well. Trailers for a lot of the actors profiled. You can watch film trailers of anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. You can see some early television episodes that some of them appeared on, and if they have a public domain film, I'll have that available on their site or on the page as well.
And I highly recommend this site. It is an awesome tribute to yesteryear mostly. And I'm a frequent visitor, and I discovered it over a quarter of a century ago, and I'm still visiting. So
It's been around for a while.
great. So thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, Hercules. Have a good evening.
You too, and thank you, Brian's cat, and say hi to Greg.
I'll do that.
Okay, good night.